Welcome back to Mystery Minds, the channel where we dive into the darkest corners of true crime, uncovering stories that shock, intrigue, and leave us questioning the world around us. In today's case, we unravel one of the most chilling and twisted tales of modern times. A story of innocence gone horribly wrong, of hidden motives, and a community forever scarred. This is the haunting story of how three teenage girls brought terror to their quiet North Carolina neighborhood. A tale of betrayal, manipulation, and calculated violence. This case will leave you asking, how could a group of young girls, bright, friendly, and seemingly ordinary, commit such unspeakable acts? Stay with us as we uncover the dark and tragic story of the North Carolina teen killers. A quiet cul-de-sac in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, was once the picture of suburban peace, where families lived in harmony and neighbors trusted one another. But in the spring of 2018, the community awoke to an unimaginable nightmare, an entire neighborhood wiped out, with three teenage girls at the center of it all. What drove them to kill? And how did no one see the signs until it was too late? Winston-Salem's Maplewood Avenue was the kind of place where everyone felt safe. The picturesque suburban neighborhood was a haven for families, with tree-lined streets, well-kept lawns, and friendly neighbors who knew each other by name. Children rode their bikes freely. Backyard barbecues brought people together, and the air was always filled with a sense of comfort and trust. It was the sort of neighborhood where everyone looked out for one another, where locking doors at night almost felt unnecessary. Among the families who lived there were the Greens, the Davises, and the Jeffersons, all deeply connected to the community. They were the type of people who attended every local event, waved to each other in passing, and shared baked goods on holidays. Maplewood Avenue seemed untouchable, a bubble of tranquility in a world that could often feel chaotic. Amid this seemingly perfect setting were three teenage girls, Emily Carter, Rachel Lane, and Madison Pierce. They were inseparable, spending almost every waking moment together. To the outside world, they were the epitome of bright young minds with promising futures. Emily was the ambitious one, excelling in academics and captaining the school's debate team. Rachel, the athletic one, was known for her talent on the soccer field and her infectious laugh. Madison was the quiet artist, often found sketching in her notebook under the shade of a tree. Together, they formed a trio that seemed to embody the very best of their generation. But beneath their cheerful exteriors lay something far darker. The three girls shared a bond that went beyond friendship, a connection rooted in secrets they kept hidden from everyone else. What brought them together wasn't just their shared interests in school, sports, or art, but a growing obsession they all harbored. It began innocently enough, an interest in true crime stories and documentaries, a fascination with the psychology of killers and the details of their crimes. At first, it was just a shared hobby, something they talked about in hushed tones during sleepovers. Over time, their interest turned into something more sinister. They began discussing not just the stories, but the motives, the plans, and the methods behind the crimes they read about. They fantasized about what it would feel like to hold that kind of power, to orchestrate something so meticulously and leave the world stunned in their wake. To them, it wasn't about evil, it was about control, infamy, and the allure of doing something that would make them unforgettable. Their obsession deepened with every passing day. What started as idle conversation turned into research, and what was once mere curiosity evolved into planning. Emily, ever the leader, began taking charge, introducing new ideas and pushing the others further. Rachel followed eagerly, swept up in the excitement, while Madison, though quieter, found herself captivated by the thrill of it all. Together, they formed a pact, one they swore to keep secret. No one in the neighborhood noticed anything unusual about the girls. They attended school like everyone else, volunteered at local events, and smiled politely at the adults who praised their achievements. They were even considered role models by some of the younger children on the street. Their ability to blend in was seamless, their outward behavior giving no hint of the darkness brewing beneath the surface. But the cracks were beginning to show, subtle signs that no one picked up on at the time. Emily, once the teacher's favorite, began withdrawing from class discussions, her mind clearly elsewhere. Rachel's once light-hearted demeanor grew sharper, and her competitive edge on the soccer field turned almost aggressive. Madison's sketches, once filled with nature and soft imagery, took a darker turn, filled with chaotic shapes and unsettling themes. To the outside world, they were just teenagers going through phases. To each other, they were laying the foundation for something far more terrifying. They began scouting their own neighborhood, studying the routines of the families they'd grown up alongside. To them, it was like a game, each detail a piece of a puzzle they were determined to complete. What no one could have imagined was that the peaceful bubble of Maplewood Avenue was about to be shattered. Hidden in plain sight, the three girls were finalizing their plan, fueled by a dangerous mix of ambition and detachment. While their neighbors lived their lives blissfully unaware, Emily, Rachel, and Madison were about to set into motion a series of events that would forever alter the fabric of their community. The perfect neighborhood, the perfect facade, was about to become the setting for one of the darkest chapters in Winston-Salem's history, and no one, not even those closest to the girls, saw it coming. On the night of March 15th, 2018, the peace of Maplewood Avenue was shattered in the most horrifying way imaginable. The Jefferson family, known for their warmth and generosity, became the first victims of an unthinkable crime. That evening had seemed as ordinary as any other. The lights in the Jeffersons' home were on, a sign of life and routine. Inside, they had just finished dinner and settled in for the night. By morning, everything had changed. A neighbor, noticing the front door ajar, called the police after failing to get a response from inside. When officers entered the home, they found a gruesome scene that defied explanation. The Jefferson family, David, his wife Karen, and their two teenage sons, had all been brutally murdered. Blood spattered the walls, and the house, once full of laughter, now stood silent and cold. The crime sent shock waves through the community. No one could fathom how such violence had come to their peaceful neighborhood. The Jeffersons were well liked and respected. There were no signs of forced entry, and nothing appeared to be stolen. It seemed senseless without motive. The police began their investigation, combing through the home for clues, but the lack of evidence left them baffled. In the days following the murders, Maplewood Avenue changed. Once a neighborhood filled with trust and open doors, it became a place of fear and suspicion. Residents began locking their doors, installing security cameras, and keeping their children indoors. Conversations were hushed and tinged with unease. The Jeffersons' deaths cast a long shadow over the community, but the truth was far darker than anyone imagined. Emily, Rachel, and Madison had pulled off their first act of violence, and to their twisted minds, it had gone exactly as planned. They had entered the Jefferson home in the dead of night, their movements precise and calculated. Each of them had a role, and they carried out their gruesome plan with chilling efficiency. What should have been terrifying, even to them, only exhilarated them. It wasn't just the act, it was the aftermath they relished, the way the community reeled in shock and horror. The girls attended the Jeffersons' memorial service, standing among their grieving neighbors. They offered condolences and played their parts perfectly, masking their guilt with tears and solemn faces. No one suspected them. They were just three teenage girls mourning a tragedy like everyone else, but inside they felt something else: satisfaction. In the weeks that followed, the fear in Maplewood Avenue began to subside. People told themselves the crime was random, a fluke, something that wouldn't happen again. Life slowly began to return to normal, but Emily, Rachel, and Madison weren't finished. They saw the temporary calm as an opportunity to strike again. Their next target was the Davis family, a couple with two young daughters who lived a few houses down from the Jeffersons. The Davises were quiet but friendly, often seen working in their garden or playing with their children in the yard. To the girls, they were the perfect choice, close enough to maintain their pattern but different enough to avoid suspicion. 2 weeks after the Jefferson murders, the Davises' home became the site of another nightmare. This time, the girls escalated their brutality, leaving behind a crime scene even more horrifying than the first. The bodies of the Davis family were discovered by a neighbor who came to check on them after they failed to show up for a planned dinner. The pattern was eerily similar: no forced entry, no theft, just unrelenting violence. Once again, Maplewood Avenue was plunged into chaos. The realization that this was no random act but the work of a killer or killers terrified the residents. Theories swirled and fear grew. The neighborhood became a ghost town after sunset, with windows shuttered and lights left on through the night. Emily, Rachel, and Madison thrived on the panic they created. They spent hours online, reading news articles about the murders and scrolling through social media posts from terrified neighbors. The attention, the fear, the power, it was everything they had craved. But with each crime, their confidence grew, and their desire for notoriety deepened. When they targeted the Green family 2 weeks later, they didn't just leave behind chaos, they left their first clue. It was subtle, a cryptic symbol scrawled in blood on the living room wall. To them, it was a signature, a way to ensure their acts wouldn't be forgotten. But to the police, it was a breakthrough. The pattern was undeniable. 3 families, all brutally murdered within weeks of each other. The once safe Maplewood Avenue was now the hunting ground of a predator or predators whose motives remained a mystery. As fear gripped the community tighter than ever, no one realized that the culprits were still living among them, hidden in plain sight, and planning their next move. Emily, Rachel, and Madison had crossed an irreversible line. By the time the Green family became their third target, they were no longer nervous or hesitant about their actions. Instead, they were methodical, cold, and disturbingly calculated. What had begun as a dark obsession had now evolved into a twisted game of control and notoriety. For them, the thrill wasn't just in committing the crimes, but in watching the chaos unfold afterward, the media attention, the police scrambling for answers, and the palpable fear gripping their once safe neighborhood. At the center of their bond was Emily, whose domineering personality made her the unquestioned leader. Her thirst for power drove the group forward, and her meticulous planning left little to chance. Emily wasn't just orchestrating the murders, she was manipulating her friends, feeding their fears and desires to ensure their loyalty. Rachel, eager to prove herself, followed Emily's lead without question. For her, the crimes were a way to feel powerful, to escape the ordinary life she had always known. Madison, the quietest of the 3, was the hardest to read. She didn't display the same eagerness as the others, but she never hesitated to participate. Whether out of a need for acceptance or something darker, she remained an active part of the group. Their pact was unbreakable. It was more than an agreement, it was a shared secret that bound them together. They spent hours planning their crimes, poring over every detail to ensure their success. They studied their neighbors' routines, noting when they left for work, when their lights went out at night, and which doors were left unlocked. To them, the neighborhood wasn't a community, it was a hunting ground. Each girl had a role in the murders. Emily was the strategist, the one who decided on the targets and devised the plans. Rachel was the enforcer, physically strong and unflinching in carrying out their acts. Madison was the lookout, keeping watch and ensuring their escape routes remained clear. Together, they operated like a well-oiled machine, their actions synchronized and precise. But their motivations, while united in purpose, were rooted in very different needs. Emily's driving force was control. She reveled in the power she held over her friends, her victims, and even the police, who were unknowingly chasing shadows. Rachel craved recognition, though her loyalty to Emily blinded her to how deeply she had been manipulated. Madison's reasons were the most enigmatic, her quiet demeanor hiding thoughts that no one, not even Emily or Rachel, could fully understand. By the time they completed their third crime, their confidence had grown to dangerous levels. They began leaving small, intentional clues at the crime scene, symbols, patterns, and cryptic messages. To them, these weren't mistakes but calculated risks, ways to inject their presence into the investigation. They wanted the world to know that the murders were connected, that someone out there was orchestrating the chaos. But they underestimated how closely the police were paying attention. While the neighborhood spiraled further into fear, Detective Laura Chambers was working tirelessly to piece together the puzzle. She had noticed the similarities between the crime scenes and the eerie precision with which the murders were carried out. The clues left behind the symbols in particular caught her attention. They were too deliberate to be random, too unique to be coincidental. Her investigation revealed something chilling. The symbols matched those in a little-known true crime book that had been checked out from the local library by Emily weeks before the murders began. Chambers also found subtle connections between the victims and the girls. Each family had at some point crossed paths with Emily, Rachel, or Madison. A petty argument, a scolding, or even a perceived slight seemed insignificant at the time, but now painted a chilling picture of how the girls had chosen their targets. Unaware that they were being watched, the trio continued to plan their next move. But the cracks in their bond were beginning to show. Madison, who had always been the most reserved, began to withdraw even further. Emily's control over the group tightened as Rachel became more reckless, feeding off the attention and fear they were generating. The neighborhood was no longer the safe haven it once was. Families who had lived there for decades were fleeing, unwilling to take the risk of staying. Maplewood Avenue had transformed into a ghost town, its once vibrant community replaced by empty homes and silent streets. The girls watched from the shadows, thrilled by the destruction they had caused. But their desire for infamy was blinding them to the fact that Detective Chambers was closing in. With each clue they left behind, she grew more certain of their involvement. The question was no longer if they would be caught, but when. And as the girls prepared for their next crime, they remained oblivious to the fact that their carefully constructed facade was beginning to crumble. The unraveling began slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. The trio's confidence had grown after each crime, emboldened by their ability to evade capture and the chaos they had left in their wake. But as they prepared for their next target, cracks began to form in their once unbreakable bond. Madison, who had always been the quietest, started to distance herself from Emily and Rachel. Her demeanor had changed. She was restless, withdrawn, and more hesitant than ever. While she still attended their secret meetings and participated in the planning, something about her felt different. Emily, always attuned to the dynamics of their group, noticed Madison's shift immediately. To her, it wasn't just a concern, it was a threat. Emily thrived on control, and Madison's sudden reluctance unsettled her. She began doubling down on her manipulations, tightening her grip on the group by reminding them of their shared secret. Rachel, eager to maintain Emily's approval, dismissed Madison's behavior as nerves, but the tension between the three was undeniable. While the group grappled with its internal struggles, Detective Laura Chambers was methodically piecing together the puzzle. The symbols left at each crime scene had led her to a disturbing discovery. Emily, Rachel, and Madison had been researching infamous killers and their patterns for months. The library records, coupled with witness statements about the girls' shared fascination with true crime, painted a damning picture. But Chambers knew that suspicion wasn't enough. She needed evidence that would hold up in court. Her breakthrough came when she uncovered surveillance footage from a nearby gas station taken the night of the Green family murders. The footage showed 3 hooded figures walking toward Maplewood Avenue around 2 a.m., their identities obscured but their movements synchronized. It wasn't definitive proof, but it was enough to place the girls under covert surveillance. Chambers and her team began monitoring their movements, hoping to catch them before they struck again. Emily, unaware that the walls were closing in, set her sights on their next target, an elderly couple named the Parkers. The Parkers had lived on Maplewood Avenue for decades and were known for their kindness and generosity. To Emily, they were an ideal choice: vulnerable, isolated, and easy to overpower. Rachel, as always, was eager to follow through, but Madison's growing unease made her hesitant, and her reluctance didn't go unnoticed. As the group finalized their plans, Madison began making subtle attempts to pull away. She spent less time with Emily and Rachel, claiming she needed space to focus on schoolwork, but her mind was consumed with guilt and fear. The weight of what they had done, coupled with the constant threat of being caught, was suffocating. Madison began to wonder if there was a way out, if she could escape the web she had helped weave without bringing everything crashing down. Emily, however, was not one to let go easily. She confronted Madison privately, reminding her of their pact and the consequences of breaking it. Madison's silence only fueled Emily's paranoia. For the first time, Emily began to see Madison not as an ally but as a liability. She shared her concerns with Rachel, who was quick to agree. The two decided to keep a closer eye on Madison, convinced that she might betray them. Unbeknownst to the trio, Detective Chambers had gathered enough circumstantial evidence to take action. With the gas station footage, the library records, and a series of anonymous tips from neighbors who had grown suspicious of the girls, Chambers was building a case. She knew she had to act quickly, as the escalating violence suggested that another attack was imminent. The girls, meanwhile, were preparing for the Parker house. Emily and Rachel finalized their plan, leaving no detail to chance. Madison, though present, was distant, her mind racing with doubts. The night before the planned attack, Madison made a decision that would change everything. She slipped away from her house and went to the police station. When she arrived, trembling and pale, she asked to speak with Detective Chambers. What she revealed over the next several hours left Chambers stunned. Madison confessed to everything: the murders, the planning, and the group's twisted motivations. She provided details that only someone involved could know, and her account matched the evidence Chambers had already collected. Madison's confession was the break Chambers needed, but it also introduced a new layer of complexity. Madison claimed she had been coerced by Emily, who she described as the mastermind. While Chambers believed Madison's remorse was genuine, she also knew the confession didn't absolve her of guilt. As Madison sat in the interrogation room, the weight of her decision sinking in, Emily and Rachel were oblivious to the betrayal. They continued preparing for the attack on the Parkers, unaware that their world was about to collapse. Chambers, armed with Madison's confession, secured warrants for their arrest. The stage was set for a confrontation that would expose the horrifying truth behind the murders on Maplewood Avenue. The morning of the planned attack on the Parkers began like any other for Emily and Rachel. Confident in their control and unaware of Madison's betrayal, they finalized their plans with chilling precision. Every detail had been rehearsed, every potential obstacle considered. To them, this was just another step in their escalating spree, another chapter in the story they believed they were writing. They didn't know that the foundation of their pact had already crumbled and that their carefully constructed facade was about to be ripped apart. Detective Laura Chambers, armed with Madison's confession and the mounting evidence against the trio, prepared her team for a coordinated operation. Madison had provided crucial information about the girls' routines, their methods, and, most importantly, their plan for that night. Chambers knew the timing was critical. If the operation failed, the Parkers' lives would be in jeopardy. She decided to act before darkness fell, hoping to catch Emily and Rachel off guard before they had a chance to strike. As the afternoon wore on, Emily and Rachel grew restless. Madison's absence from their final meeting didn't sit well with Emily. Her suspicions about Madison had been growing, and now they were impossible to ignore. She tried to maintain her composure, reassuring Rachel that everything was under control, but the seeds of doubt had been planted. Rachel, always quick to follow Emily's lead, dismissed Madison's absence as nerves. They had no idea that Madison was already working with the police, her confession setting their downfall into motion. By early evening, officers surrounded Maplewood Avenue, strategically positioning themselves to avoid detection. Detective Chambers had carefully planned the operation, ensuring there would be no mistakes. Madison, now fully cooperating with the investigation, had been moved to a safe location. She had given Chambers everything she needed to confirm Emily and Rachel's involvement, including the locations of the tools they used and the hiding spots where they stored evidence. As night fell, Emily and Rachel set out, carrying their tools and disguises. They approached the Parkers' house with the same confidence that had carried them through their previous crimes. The quiet neighborhood, now a shadow of its former self, seemed eerily still. They moved quickly and quietly, oblivious to the watchful eyes of the police. The moment they stepped onto the Parkers' property, the trap was sprung. Officers emerged from the shadows, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Emily and Rachel froze, the realization of what was happening dawning too late. Chambers herself stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tense silence as she issued the final command. The girls were taken into custody without a struggle, their confidence shattered and their masks of control stripped away. Back at the station, Emily and Rachel were separated for questioning. Emily, defiant to the end, refused to cooperate, her sharp mind searching for a way to turn the situation to her advantage. Rachel, shaken and confused, faltered under pressure. Without Emily's guiding influence, she struggled to maintain her composure, her loyalty beginning to waver. As the evidence was laid out before them, both girls realized the magnitude of their situation. Madison's cooperation proved to be the key to unraveling the case. Her detailed confession, combined with the physical evidence recovered from the girls' homes, left no doubt about their guilt. The tools used in the murders, the notes outlining their plans, and the symbols that tied them to each crime scene painted a damning picture. Emily's influence over the group became a central theme in the investigation, with prosecutors building their case around her role as the mastermind. The trial that followed captivated the nation, the horrifying details of the murders shocking even the most seasoned reporters. Emily, Rachel, and Madison were thrust into the spotlight, their faces splashed across headlines and their actions dissected by psychologists, true crime enthusiasts, and the public alike. Emily's cold, unrepentant demeanor during the proceedings cemented her reputation as the ringleader, while Rachel's faltering loyalty and Madison's remorse painted a more complex picture of their dynamic. In the end, all three girls were found guilty, their sentences reflecting their individual roles in the crimes. Emily received life without parole, her manipulation and lack of remorse ensuring the harshest punishment. Rachel, seen as a willing accomplice, was sentenced to 25 years, while Madison's cooperation and evident remorse earned her a reduced sentence of 15 years. Maplewood Avenue, scarred by the violence and loss, began the slow process of healing. Families who had fled returned, determined to rebuild their lives and restore the sense of community that had been stolen from them. But the memory of what happened lingered, a dark chapter in the neighborhood's history that would never be forgotten. For Detective Chambers, the case was both a triumph and a reminder of the darkness that can hide in plain sight. The faces of Emily, Rachel, and Madison haunted her, not just as perpetrators but as a chilling reminder of how ordinary lives can be twisted into something unrecognizable. The neighborhood's peace had been shattered, but justice had been served, ensuring that the girls' reign of terror would never claim another victim. Thank you for watching Mystery Minds, where we delve into the most chilling true crime stories. The case of the North Carolina teen killers serves as a grim reminder that evil can hide behind even the most innocent faces. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to join us for more dark and twisted tales. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.